So I just saw the new Until Dawn movie, and I didn't really like it that much. Hello everyone, and welcome to my quick review of the Until Dawn film based on the popular PlayStation exclusive game released in 2015. Now, I feel like I should make this clear right away, but Until Dawn was my first and one of my favorite PlayStation exclusives of all time. I love the idea of it playing off of the cliches of cabin in the woods type movies and adding a clever spin to them. To this day, I remember that game fondly, so much so that I bought the remaster on the day of release. When they announced the movie a while back, I had mixed feelings. A part of me was excited because that game is basically a fully playable film, and I felt like seeing it adapted as a movie could be pretty awesome. But on the other hand, a big part of the reason why the game was so good was because it was a game, where your actions directly affected the characters and the ending you got. So I wasn't sure how to feel, but I kept an open mind, especially when I learned that they were changing the movie up so that it wasn't a one-to-one redo of the game. Now, there are a few ways I could approach this review. I could completely ignore comparing it to the game and tell you why it failed as a movie on its own, or I could throw in reasons why the game just did better than the movie. And honestly, I think I'm gonna try both. But I'll keep this pretty brief until the movie releases digitally and I can do a full review on the movie. By the way, minor spoilers. So this movie begins with a woman crawling her way out of the ground. Her hand rips through the dirt and she gets out of whatever hell she was in alive, just to be greeted by a killer that immediately murders her. Before dying, she begs him not to kill her again. This hints at how the movie will function for the rest of the characters. Whoever gets stuck at this particular cabin will be forced to die over and over again until they can survive until dawn. Now, when I first learned about this premise, I thought it was actually a pretty cool way to sort of try to incorporate the functionality of the game into the movie. Choices are the biggest part of the game, and a lot of the decisions made could easily get characters killed. But obviously in the game, if you fucked up, you could reset and replay and try to make a better decision and get a better ending or outcome. The movie can't do that because it isn't playable, but having the characters make choices that get them killed and resetting their progress each time is a pretty creative way to keep things both fresh and still respectable to the game. So that's something I will certainly give this movie. The premise, in theory, works for what it's going for. We learn later that this woman from the beginning of the movie is the sister of one of our main characters, Clover. Her and her friends are going on a little journey to kind of feel better about her sister, Melanie's disappearance. Unfortunately, this trip actually is following Melanie's path, so they end up at the exact spot that she disappeared. I feel like I should cover more positives in this movie before I move into complaining about it. 1. I appreciate Peter Stormare's role in this movie. Now, if you don't know about the game at all, basically a character named Josh loses both of his sisters during a stay at a cabin with his friends. Sort of like what happens to the girl in the beginning of the movie. Now, Peter Stormare basically plays Josh's imaginary therapist in the game. He was sort of creepy and he didn't really help him get over the disappearances in a healthy way. He serves as both our guide through the playthrough of the game and an awesome reveal about whose eyes we've been looking through the entire time. In the movie, he appears as a man in a gas station that the group stops at in the beginning of the movie. His whole purpose early is to tell Clover where Melanie disappeared and to make you super uncomfortable. I thought it was pretty cool having Stormare come in to play this role. A nice little Easter egg for us Until Dawn fans. He even comes back later in a plot twist that I don't necessarily like all that much, but I appreciate him being there. The shots were also pretty good in this movie. I appreciate how unsettling they made the movie feel, from the shot choices to the color correction of the film. It looks like a horror movie. Some scenes are a little darker than I would prefer, but mostly I'd say this movie is shot well. There's this one scene in particular that I think of where Clover is hiding behind something as a Wendigo slowly approaches her, and it appears closer and closer each time a red light blinks behind her. It looks pretty cool, and it also was super reminiscent of the don't move sections of the game, which, if you aren't familiar with it, there were moments where you had to hold the controller completely still so that you wouldn't be detected. I could literally imagine the icon sitting at the bottom of the frame. And speaking of, the movie sort of feels like a game itself. It's a little hard to explain, but watching it, it feels like watching a full-length cutscene of a game rather than a movie, which works in the film's favor since it's based on a game. The acting is mostly solid too. I won't say the performances are particularly groundbreaking, but it's never bad. I fully believe that each of the actors involved is the character they are portraying. They do a decent enough job being convincing all the way through. I think that pretty much covers all the positive things I have to say about this movie. Now it's time for the negatives, and this list is kind of long. First of all, there's a character in this movie that's introduced in the beginning and is said to have spiritual powers. One of the friends, Megan, can sense when things are wrong and can feel the energy of random shit in the universe. This was honestly one of the worst parts of the movie for me. Way too many times in this movie do we have to just watch her feel bad juju in the air before things happen. And one time she literally just senses where the plot progression is. Like, the group gets stuck at one point and she literally points to the sky, closes her eyes, and her finger guides her to the exact thing they need to move the story forward hidden in a desk. That has got to be the most uncreative way to get the characters where they need to go. Not to mention, her character is probably one of the least interesting characters of the bunch. And that leads me to my next big problem with this movie. The characters are all one-dimensional and underdeveloped. You really can't get attached to any of them at all because we don't really learn too much about them. They sort of all just have one character trait and that's all we have to go off of. It doesn't help that the movie damn near starts at the cabin, so we get put into the horror world way too soon. There's barely any time for us to connect with the characters before they all die for the first time. Each death is pretty easy to skip over because we're barely rooting for our protagonists to win because we just don't really know them. In the game, there's a lot of shit that happens in between the creepy and traumatizing stuff to make us like everyone. Or at least almost everyone. I wouldn't say everyone in this movie is unlikable, but they aren't particularly interesting to follow either. It doesn't help that the characters don't seem to really be too affected by the deaths of everyone around them either. Most of the time, they just react like it's any other Tuesday. Sometimes they even kill each other without a second thought, which is weird because they are implied to be super close. There's one instance where it's too hard to do, but there's another where one friend murders another one like it's nothing because she was mad at some of the things he was saying. He was saying shit that made sense too, which made it even more annoying. And then they cut to her comforting him as he dies? The relationships and the attachments to one another were messy and sometimes really inconsistent. The villains in this movie are also super underwhelming. The slasher guy that wears the iconic mask that Josh wore in the game is just a big Jason Voorhees type brute that kills everyone and has really no character. And I guess him being a one-note murderer can work, but as a fan of the game, it doesn't really do it for me personally since there was a really cool twist about who the killer was in the game. But I suppose he works for what he is in this movie. A massive threat to the friends in the house that isn't easily faced by taking damage and even harder to kill. And he has a few decent looking kills in the movie as well, but ultimately, for me, I found him boring. And because of the movie's premise, it was hard to really fear the guy since even the characters didn't even seem to give a fuck if they got killed. The Wendigos were also pretty meh to me. They weren't all that scary, and I feel like them being introduced alongside the killer so early took away from their impact. In the game, they were only hinted at for the first half of the game, but when they're revealed as a real threat, it's kind of like an oh shit and it all makes sense now moment. Not to mention, actually having to play the game yourself added to the fear. The movie shoots itself in the foot by showing them in the beginning. Also, while I respect the decision to use practical effects for the Wendigos, I feel like the Wendigos look more like Walking Dead zombies than Wendigos, and it takes away from their scariness for me. Something else that I found problematic with this movie is the fact that a lot of the deaths happen off screen. Now, I know I might sound a little sadistic since I want to see the murders actually happen, but this is literally a slasher movie. So when all of the slashing happens off camera and you just kind of hear a scream or see the aftermath when the camera comes back to the character, it's a little disappointing. I'm sure you get where I'm coming from. The rest of my issues can kind of just be grouped up into a category of things I will just call dumb shit. There's quite a bit of dumb shit in this movie that either made me laugh or shake my head. Like Clover, for example, having this weird disorder where she trusts every single untrustworthy sound or voice she hears in the movie, or people literally fucking exploding from the inside out from something I won't spoil, or people making direct callbacks to lines of dialogue they said like 2 scenes ago as if there's supposed to be some crazy payoff in our brains when we literally just saw the scene where they first said it, or the whole group of friends not realizing Megan has disappeared one day while they're in the cabin until way after we do somehow. And probably the dumbest thing is this one point in the movie where we had officially saw the characters die a few times already, and the movie just says, actually, it's been 13 times, the characters just don't remember the other deaths anymore. And we have to watch a montage of the deaths on one of the friends' phone. And by the way, some of this montage was literally just the trailer. And it actually just feels like watching a trailer inside of the movie, and it really took me out of the watching experience when it happened. In short, this movie is kind of a mess. As an Until Dawn fan, this movie was a huge disappointment. There's just so many things that the game does in general that the movie doesn't get right. You aren't attached to the characters, the plot is pretty paper thin, and the threats are all underwhelming. I think maybe casual moviegoers unfamiliar with the game might enjoy this movie at least a little bit. They may not think it's the best thing in the world, but they'll probably have fun with it, so if you haven't played the game and want to watch it, I'd say give it a shot. But I think most Until Dawn fans like myself won't really care for this movie much, or will forget about it as soon as they leave the theater. Once this movie is released digitally, I am more than willing to do a longer and more detailed review for you guys with full spoilers and dissection of scenes, but for now, this is what I got for you. Plain and simple, I did not really like this movie. 5 out of 10.